What's up, fellow lords of gaming, and welcome back to the channel. We're jumping in today and we're gonna be taking a look at solo leveling Arise Overdrive, and we're gonna give you guys a little bit lesson on how to craft and give you some of my tips and tricks. All right, without further ado, let's jump right on in. So in the bottom of the main headquarters, there is this hunter, I suppose, May, right down on the bottom. In her inventory or her list, she has the ability to craft Sun Jinyu's weapons, hunter weapon crafting, and then do item crafting as well as fusion. All of these are extremely important and valuable for you to understand how the system works, so that way you know what you're grinding for towards the end, mid to late stages of the game. So let's jump in and take a look real quick, starting with Sun Jinyu's weapon crafting. Depending on the style of play that you have is going to depend on the weapon that you should be looking to craft. You're not going to have a great deal of options at the early game, but as you make your way to the mid game and you start to develop out, whether you're playing the assassin, duelist, elementalist, or ruler classes, you'll get pretty good understanding of where you should be going with regard to what weapons you should be choosing. So I'll give you an example. I am currently playing as a ruler. The ruler largely bases its stats on the perception, intelligence, and agility type skills. The rest of the things like vitality and strength don't really come into play, other than strength provides a base attack damage layer and vitality applies to your health and your healing potions. But that tends to let me know where I want to go with the ruler class. Understanding the ruler is also centered around AoE and control effects might determine what type of weapon that you want to play with. So to start this off, you should be looking for weapons based on your class's primary stats. So if you're a duelist, it's likely to be strength. If you're an assassin, it's likely to be agility. If you're a ruler, it's likely to be perception, and if you're an elementalist, it's likely to be intelligence. And getting that idea of where you should be going sets the bar. Second thing that you should be looking at is where the weapon scales. If it's an A tier weapon, then it's probably only good for early to mid game. If it's an S tier weapon, that means that you probably be using that weapon from mid to late game. So how does that work? If you notice with Kasaka's Venom Fang, that weapon can be leveled up 4 times for a max potential of A tier. Why is it A tier? If you notice underneath Kasaka's Venom Fang, there are 3 substats here that are going to affect the weapon's damage output. You have agility, perception, and strength. Its agility modifier goes all the way up to A. If you were to look at a weapon, however, like Baruka's or the Night Killer, those weapons have an S tier ranking because they are affected at agility for S and agility for S. So there's an S tier modifier that's happening with the agility stat inside of these weapons. So you want to pay attention to those, right? So now that gives you an idea. So for instance, for me as a ruler, I kind of like to play with the daggers. So I was running around with the Kasaka's Venom Fang, and I'm currently hunting for items to go with Baruka's dagger because I just like that whole feeling around the anime when we got to the scene when he kills Baruka. However, I also, from playing Arise, loved the demonic plum sword. So, and this one happens to have a perception, intelligence, and agility stat here. So you can make those investments inside of that weapon if you see fit. You want to equip whatever weapon you have to see if it kind of suits your play style. If you're a player that likes to be in the heart of the battle and you like to do deflects and stuff like that and evasions as you run around the bosses, you want to make sure that you're choosing a weapon that's going to suit you for that. Daggers are probably more suited for that style of play, whereas swords are going to allow you to be able to do mid to long range type combat, especially the demonic plum flower sword. So that gives you an idea. Now to specifically talk about crafting items. Okay, so crafting items like demonic plum flower sword are going to require different materials that can be gained from doing various bosses, gates, dungeon breaks, encores, and red gate type missions. You need to be aware of where you can farm these. And I think this is the place where people are not understanding the way the gameplay mechanic works the most. So how do you do this? If I was to click on the demonic plum flower sword, here you can see this is the list of materials that I need in order to be able to craft this sword. So the mana imbued ingots that are here can be gained simply from the areas for chapter 7 of the instance dungeon for Cursed Giant Iberg at star 8 and star 10. That means I have to go to that specific mission, the chapter 7 instance dungeon, and I have to play it at tier 8 or tier 10. Anything below those levels is not going to help me net the rewards for that item. Understand? So we can move to the world map by simply clicking on that item, and you notice it automatically is going to pull up tier 8 of that cursed giant iceberg map. And inside of here, you notice immediately that that's the mana imbued ingots. Now, this is a level 58 mission. If you were to try to complete it at stage 9 or stage 10, you'll notice that those mana imbued ingots are available as well. Understand that you can click on the details screen here, and this will show you all of the available items that are going to be gained from that specific gate, instance dungeon, encore dungeon, or the red gate. And they're telling you exactly where you can get those items from. So here you can see at level 85 for Iberg, you can get the first clear reward, you can get the chest, and you can also get the mana imbued ingots and some gold just for clearing that stage. The boss will drop items such as your consumables for where you're here, any of those starlight components, and it'll also have the ability to drop some of the mana imbued ingots along with the deformed ignition crystals. And if you're lucky enough, you'll get one of these keys, which will help you craft the items for the Workshop of Brilliant Light and the Power of Destruction invitation tickets. Outside of that, you'll also grab some gold, even though the gold rewards aren't that great inside of, you know, instance dungeons and so forth. I wouldn't suggest farming these, not for XP or gold, but just for the material type items. So for me, for instance, I've cleared all the way up to level 58, and I've had a little bit of trouble going into level 71, even though I'm at like level 58. I think level 57 I am right now at this moment. So that is essentially the gameplay loop, is that you're going to look for the item that you want to craft, and then you're going to craft that item by searching for the materials inside of the different gates or instance dungeon type missions that you're going to play. That's Sun Jin Woo. Does it change very much for the hunter weapons? Not really, although the required crafting materials can be gained from in the gameplay. Like the instance dungeons, it's a little bit different. So let's take a look, for instance, at Emma Lawrence. I've already crafted her weapon, so it'll be, you know, I can speak from experience on this one. Here, you'll notice that each of the hunter's weapons requires different type of materials. They're not materials that are available in many of the gates because they are things like tank special modules, the flawless average vanadium, and fire mana power potions, and then a specific weapon. So what the game requires you to do is craft a base level weapon that you can then go into a specific sub-tree to basically get that weapon to here, and those things are going to require things like tank special modules. Now, the one thing that is going to be needed regardless of the hunter is these flawless average vanadiums. Depending on the hunter's element, your power potion is going to change. So for Emma, she is a fire-based character, so it requires fire mana power potions. If I was to click on Cha-He-In, it requires holy mana power potions. It also changes the special module depending on the class of them. Cha is considered a fighter, so she requires fighter special modules, whereas Emma Laurent requires tank. She's a tank, so it requires tank special modules. For every class, that is going to change. If it's a mage, if it's a fighter, if it's a tank, if it's a DPS, those are how the characters are basically going to have the special modules. Every character, however, inside the hunters are going to require these flawless average vanadium weapons, especially if they go to an S tier weapon. You will notice that some of the hunter weapons do not go up to S tier because they're not S tier hunters. So for instance, here with Nam Chae Young's weapon, it only goes up to A tier. She requires ranger special modules, and she requires at least just one flawless advanced vanadium. So you have to pay attention to those and where you can get these items. So for instance, those special modules, they can be crafted or they can be attained from red gates. You have 3 red gates that you should be farming: stage 6, stage 7, and stage 9. However, I suggest that you most likely stay to Fakna for the following reasons. At stage 6, unfortunately, Azrak, I think that's how you say his name, they have placed him in a very weird position on the map where his size and the area which you're fighting doesn't really help, and you can die just an offhand chances where you shouldn't really be dying to this character. It's really weird because you'll get jammed up by either his aerial attacks or just the plain size and trying to figure out where he's at. The difference is with Fakna, the map is pretty open, so you can really go to the different towers to farm out the areas, gain the materials, and then fight Fakna in a very open landscape environment where you can actually run, dodge, and position yourself appropriately so that way you're not dying and achieve higher tiers. Stage 9, Nothing wrong necessarily with the fight with Ashura. I think that this is probably the next best area, except that it does get a little bit harder, so make sure that you're geared up appropriately for that. Now, outside of this, we need to now talk about item crafting and fusion. I'm going to go into fusion first because I think it's the third probably most important thing inside of the crafting tree, and that's because you're going to get your blessing stones from this. Now, you can farm red gates to get blessing stones as well, and that's a really good method to get blessing stones. However, the other way is that you're going to collect these items called powder of blessing. You can use these to fuse items into rare blessings. When you get enough rare blessings that are duplications of blessings that you already have, those items can be fused to become heroic blessings, and then you can take heroic blessings to make legendary blessings. I would highly suggest that you look at farming the areas inside Red Gate so that way you can get heroic blessings and you can then fuse those items into legendary blessings. It's going to probably be one of the better ways in terms of getting to legendary blessings, so that way you can really improve the way your character is going to play. The way blessings affect Sun Jin Woo is going to largely be dependent upon the way you play your specific character. So, for instance, I have some very general, across the stat type blessing stones equipped right now, because I'm not in that area of the late stage of gameplay where I'm trying to say this is exactly how I'm playing Sun Jin Woo. I need these specific blessings, but they do come in that variety. So for instance, here you can see I have my first legendary blessing, which is Swift Strike. Swift Strike increases my precision while I dash, and then it also, the duration of my extreme evasion greatly increases because of this. So I have like a benefit and a minus because of that, right? So what this basically does is change up the way that I might play this game, because I might rely on that precision. I really want the precision modifier, or perception is really what it is, right? Perception to go and increase inside of there. I might have this equipped, but it all depends on the play style for the specific subclass that you have or the specific build that you have. And realistically, at this game, what I'm noticing so far is that no two builds are exactly the same. Just kind of think of it from that angle and perspective. Now, outside of this, we do have item crafting, and it's probably going to be the last of the important items, because you are able to craft certain items in the game, and some of them have very important values. So for instance, in order to farm out tier 10 type gear, which is going to be some of the curse type sets in the game, you're going to need invitations to either the Workshop of Brilliant Light or the Power of Destruction invitation. You can farm for these items at normal gates and dungeons. However, there's a lower drop rate, it seems, in there than it is inside of the Workshop of Brilliant Light or the Power of Destruction. So you want to make sure that you can acquire these keys and then use your pure waters and your mana imbued fragments to craft invitations for each of those events. Outside of this, you're probably going to be leveling up shadows like Igris, like Tank, and these characters that are going to really be beneficial, especially if you're playing the ruler class. So you definitely want to make those investments in terms of like being able to produce these fragments. Outside of this, you have the ability to produce upgrades for your hunters, as well as produce cores and weapon materials like potions and so forth here that you're going to want to craft. So it's the last tree that's pretty important, but overall is very important to the game, especially the development of your characters and your hunters as you make them into late stages of the game. Because if you're going to leave bare bone type characters and you're not going to equip them with their weapons and you're not going to equip them with the proper artifacts, you're probably not going to make it to stage 85 and level 75. Just be aware of that. I'll leave you guys with this one note. Please start farming the red gates. Don't skip those things. Make sure that you're farming them. It's the best place for gold. It's the best place for XP. It's the best place for gear in the game. Just figure out which one you're going to farm, which one you're more comfortable with farming, and then go at it and have fun. Leave any comments that you have for the video in the bottom. If any questions that you have. Until next time, guys. Peace.